The Internet of Thing, ADS-B, Hypoxia, and Anti-Collision Complex Event Processing. Let's quickly recap ADS-B from our previous broadcasts. ADS-B is an onboard GPS-based receiver transmitter that gathers a plane's exact location and velocity in 3D space and transmits it to a series of ground stations. The ground stations work as a mosaic to build a complete picture of all aircraft in any one sector. ADS-B also has provisions for plane-to-plane communications for aircraft that are within 1,500 feet vertically and 1.5 miles horizontally of each other. This information can be used to both allow aircraft to maintain reduced separation as well as anti-collision avoidance system. In this episode, we will take our first steps on the path to the Internet of Things. We will discuss what appears to be a fairly obvious use of ADS-B, yet does not appear to be under consideration at the present time by the FAA, namely emergency descent situations. There are many scenarios for in-flight emergencies that require immediate action on the part of the pilot, none more urgent than onboard fire, smoke in the cabin, fuel starvation, or hypoxia. In the case of signs of fire or smoke, the recommended procedure is to get the plane on the ground as quickly as possible. In addition to requiring a rapid descent, it requires coordination with ATC to identify a suitable airport to land the plane, a clear slot in the landing pattern, and to roll emergency vehicles to be prepared for the worst. In the case of hypoxia, the goal is to get the plane down to a safe breathing altitude within a predefined period of time. In all three scenarios, a rapid descent is typically called for. The effects of hypoxia can occur rapidly. In 2014, a TBM 900 flown by Larry Glazier out of Buffalo evidently suffered a pressurization issue. Assuming it was hypoxia, the pilot either didn't fully comprehend the situation or did not want to formally declare an emergency, instead stating, "We have an indication that it's not correct in the plane." As a result, ATC stepped them down slowly in a controlled manner, first to 25,000 feet, with plans to go to 20,000. Eventually, Larry lost consciousness as his plane continued to fly across the country on autopilot, eventually crashing into the Caribbean. Given the pilot is dead and the wreckage is lost at sea, we may never know the true cause. In 1999, pro golfer Payne Stewart's plane took off from Florida for a quick hop to Texas. Instead, flying at 43,000 feet, it crashed in South Dakota. In an eerily similar scenario to the TBM 900, flybys of military jets revealed fogged up and frozen over windows, with pilots slumped in their seats. In 2005, a Greek airliner crashed, killing all 121 people on board. Again, hypoxia was determined to be the most likely cause. In this case, there was evidence that the flight steward, who was also a pilot, was able to activate an emergency bottle of oxygen, but being locked out of the cockpit for security reasons, was unable to rectify the situation. Again, this latter part being speculation. Mercifully, he most likely ran out of oxygen long before the plane crashed into the mountainside. Hypoxia requires the most urgent of descent profiles. With little time to diagnose or debate the situation, in the case of hypoxia, a pilot needs to start a rapid descent to 12,000 feet immediately, and they need to do this with or without ATC support. This is always a dicey situation. Planes simply do not pull over to the curb to allow emergencies to pass by. Furthermore, once the plane passes the 18,000 foot mark, they exit the tightly controlled Class A airspace and venture back into the mixed general use aviation space. Even at heights of 14, 15, and 16,000 feet, you can have a general aviation pilot flying VFR who is not in communication with the en route controller. That pilot would have no idea of the unfolding situation. This would appear to be an obvious case where ADS-B could come into play. Let's envision how this might come about in the fully connected world of the Internet of Things. Keep in mind, what follows is pure conjecture. To the best of my knowledge, what is to follow is not on the drawing board for future development by the FAA. Remember our intrepid pilot Joe? After activating his flight plan, he has taken off and is on his way to his destination. Suddenly Joe feels strange. He does not have the luxury to diagnose the cause of the problem or debate if it's truly hypoxia. He must get to a safe breathing altitude, then proceed from there. Therefore, he has a lot to do in a short period of time. He needs to get down as quickly as possible without ripping off the wings or smacking into some poor chap below him. Ideally, he needs to give ATC a heads up so that they can clear a corridor for him to maneuver. There is a clear procedure as to what Joe would do in today's aviation landscape, but what would he do in the futuristic interconnected world of the Internet of Things? So Joe's flying along and he's starting to feel the effects of hypoxia. The problem is Joe is not alone in the sky. It's a mixed bag. Some aircraft are below him, some are above, some are going faster and overtaking him, some are going slower and he's overtaking them. Some are very maneuverable, some are not. At the same time, don't forget that each aircraft is protected by their 3,000 foot by 3 mile hockey puck shaped ADS-B security zone, all of whom are updating ATC in real time. Let's further assume that information relayed from ADS-B to ATC is then forwarded to a big data server running Storm or some other memory resident complex event processor. Rather than communicate verbally with ATC, at the press of a button, Joe can signal his need to start an emergency descent. This notice would then automatically be forwarded to Hadoop. From there, new rules would be created in Storm. Storm would calculate a new conic-shaped zone around Joe's aircraft. Finally, any aircraft that fall into or are converging with this zone are notified, and non-conflicting flight paths are calculated. In a matter of seconds, a corridor is created and all affected planes are safely rerouted. All this using existing technologies available in the aviation industry today. But the Internet of Things story does not end there. Of course, the word needs to get out to the various aircraft. The preferred method today would be for the controller to notify and redirect the various aircraft in a systematic manner. This is fine. There should not be a desire to remove the controller from the equation. After all, having a controller on a shared frequency helps to ensure everyone has an accurate situational awareness of the sky around them. That said, in the futuristic world of the Internet of Things, it should be conceivable to have Storm feed the collision zones to the various aircraft through their existing onboard anti-collision systems. There are various options for collision avoidance beyond ADS-B, including TCAS, ACAS, PCAS, and FLARM, otherwise known as flight alarm, which is a low-cost, lightweight system typically used in gliders. And we must not forget the planes being tracked with secondary radar who do not have ADS-B and probably do not have an onboard anti-collision system. They would require notification too. To achieve this end in the world of the Internet of Things, after a MapReduce job is run to help identify aircraft either directly in the descent zone or those approaching, a further lookup would be performed to search the Internet of Things to determine which type of system is deployed on each aircraft. This would require reaching out to an FAA-maintained aircraft registration database. Accordingly, the proper message would be formatted and sent to the individual aircraft. At the same time, a list of aircraft to notify would be generated and sent to the controller's display. This list would be sorted in order in which the controller should contact first. Things to consider when generating this list would include Was there a feedback handshake from the onboard anti-collision system? If not, it might be inoperative, or the message might not have gotten through. Is the aircraft closest to the action? If so, verbal communication is urgent. Does the aircraft lack anti-collision avoidance? If so, the controller must contact that aircraft. Having the Internet of Things both broadcast the necessary messages and prioritize the communication list for the controller would result in the most optimum automated and verbal notification mechanisms possible. Finally, it should be noted, while we have been focusing on hypoxia, it is only a small step to extend the Hadoop storm processing to clear an approach path to the nearest suitable airport. Doing so would require several other near real-time lookups, the main thrust being to marry the aircraft's current flight characteristics, for example, its gross weight taking into account fuel and passengers, its max range, the current winds and pressure altitude, against suitable airports in the vicinity. This concludes our conversation regarding the Internet of Things as it relates to emergency descent situations. As can be seen, using Hadoop and complex event processing, it is possible with today's technology to greatly automate the process, resulting in significantly reduced response times and increased safety, all the while keeping the controller firmly centered in the process.